Welcome to About Women for Women with Dr. Kamila. How to find balance and joy in perimenopause and beyond. We bring together psychology and biology, spirituality and science, personal stories and professional insights for the benefit of all. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Welcome to another episode of About Women for Women with Dr. Kamila. My guest today is again Emily Foster, a functional nutritionist. And welcome, Emily. Very good to have you again with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So let's dive straight in. Today we're going to talk about when the body says no and what are the consequences when the body says no. So first question I'd like to ask you, I want to say that there is something that stops me every time, that roughly 8 out of 10 people with thyroid disorders are women. And with autoimmune conditions is a similar story. So why, in your opinion, us as women, we suffer more, and that's more prevalent in women? And are women's bodies more affected than men by thyroid conditions in general?
Absolutely. Women's bodies tend to be more affected with anything. Health-wise, women just tend to suffer more. We don't fully understand this phenomenon. I think just like with anything else in life, it's always multifaceted, right? The answer is never just cut and dried to one thing. So the psychological component is very much there. And we see this from the very beginning of life. If you have fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, most often usually one is smaller than the other and one is just kind of just more fragile than the other one, it will most often be the girl. We just see this consistently. Boys, they're more extroverted in their thinking. Even as infants, we come hardwired. we come hardwired for the way that we are, the way that we handle things. And, for the most part, I guess that's a pretty big blanket statement to make. But my friend had fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. The boy learned to crawl faster than the girl did. And it was literally like she just thought that she couldn't do it. She was just more neurotic almost from the get-go. And they're perfectly extroverted, well-adjusted adults now. But as babies, the boy was just more adventurous, more fearless, more, everything. The way that men are made engenders more being comfortable, being extroverted and saying no, just boundaries
But what is it about us, specifically women? Because this podcast is about women in perimenopause. So what is it about women in perimenopause? Because I was thinking specifically about progesterone, how it plays a role in kind of thyroid conditions. But what is it? Is there anything that you can talk about that to explain it to our viewers, but also anything else that in our physiology, from your perspective, makes us more susceptible to thyroid conditions?
The very obvious one on the surface is that we share our resources with the babies that we create. So that's a really big physiological contributor to all of those conditions. And to wrap up the baby comment, that we see that, psychologically, from the get-go. So we have several components that are just kind of innate in us, but then we also have all of the things that we've been talking about in the previous episodes, about all of the external psychological ramifications, all of the external stress and the expectations and the mental load and all of the things that we deal with, in addition to all of the normal life things that men don't seem to have issues with. Women are much more likely to stay up late at night thinking about all of their to-do list for the next day. We're more likely to have sleep issues than men. Why? Because testosterone promotes good sleep. So when you have higher testosterone levels, you're going to sleep better. And that's kind of a good thing biologically, because we're the ones that care for the babies. We're the ones that nurse the babies at night when they're tiny. So we have to be a little more okay with getting less sleep or interrupted sleep to a degree for different seasons of our life, but men don't have to worry about that. So just the lack of sleep in our lives, there's so many facets to this.
Can we speak specifically about progesterone? Because I think this is specifically about women and the role of progesterone in thyroid health and in thyroid hormones.
Progesterone drives thyroid function. So in your cycling years, when progesterone is very high, it can compensate for thyroid deficiency if you have thyroid deficiency, you often don't notice that you do while you're cycling. It's only when you hit perimenopause and those progesterone numbers start to drop that you start like not feeling very well. And that's often when, we've talked before about this unmasking time, where all of a sudden it looks to you like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I've got thyroid issues now, when it wasn't all of a sudden, it's been there all along.
Okay, and in terms of like thyroid disorders, like I was diagnosed by accident, oh, well, by accident. When I actually started having night sweats, I finally found a doctor that did like a full panel, not just the normal regular hormones, but everything else, including thyroid, including antibodies and so on. And this is when I discovered that I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so for me, it came to surface, or I realized that this is the case for me when I started having perimenopausal symptoms. So perhaps like it has to be really bad, like you say, before then progesterone is masking those problems that for the women to be diagnosed with thyroid condition before. But then more of them, I think, get diagnosed with thyroid conditions after pregnancies, like you said, when the resources have been used up, you know, and kind of later on in life. So I think hormones play a role.
Oh, absolutely. Our sex hormones buffer everything, literally everything that could be going wrong in our body, right? Because progesterone, like pro is, is for or positive, and gest is life, gestation, that is life. So the whole role of progesterone is to make sure that the baby that your body might potentially create has a really smooth ride, right? So no, no overly overhistamine problems, no thyroid problems, everything should be very, very comfortable. And that's what progesterone does. It's lovely. It's when we start to see that drop, then we start to notice, hey, things aren't so smooth and it doesn't feel very good.
So pregnancy and motherhood also costs the woman's body nutritionally and hormonally a lot. And that has an effect on how the body is functioning in general. And do you feel like there is more conditions, autoimmune conditions and other kind of conditions diagnosed in women because of that cost that women's bodies pay for creating life and sustaining life for 9 months?
Absolutely. And we are seeing more and more struggle with recovering. It used to be that in an Indigenous community, you didn't have babies close together. You spaced them out to give your body time to rebuild those resources before you attempted to build another body. It was almost looked down upon if you had babies too close together, like, what's wrong with you? You can't control yourself, that you're not thinking about the next generation. It's taken very seriously. And they innately knew that you had to eat a very nutrient-dense diet to be able to create healthy bodies. And we've lost that sacred wisdom along the way. After World War II, with the invention of, fast food, and all of the different food giants were born, and all making food shelf stable and taking out the good fats and the omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, and getting these imbalances and deficiencies in our food and mass producing things instead of just living quietly on our little farms and getting very nutrient-rich diets. That has also contributed to us not doing well. I mean, again, no answer is cut and dried, right? It's always multifaceted. There's so much going on, but we see the repercussions in women in the state of Utah, of the whole nation of the United States. They have the highest hysterectomy rate. Why? Because they have babies. Women will push out 6, 8 babies.
Oh my gosh.
Very closely together. And by the time they get to their last one, it's a mandatory hysterectomy because their uterus is shredding. It's too much of a toll on their bodies. We didn't see that 2 generations ago. Even 1 generation. Well, my husband is quite a bit older than me. He's 24 years my senior, but his mother pushed out 16 babies and was fine. She did okay. She never had a need for a hysterectomy. She was overweight the whole rest of her life. So she struggled with obesity, but her body held together a little bit more than what we're seeing now, where just every generation is becoming more and more depleted, and women pay the price.
It's very interesting what you're saying, that this was the case in indigenous societies, cultures. But I also know that in Chinese medicine and in kind of like in China and those kind of culture, they have a special nurse, a special diet, another woman coming and cooking for you special kinds of food with specific nutrients, special kinds of teas, giving you lots of care, lots of pampering, just to support mother, because culturally they know that if the mother is nourished and well supported, the baby will grow healthy.
Right. Yeah, that's correct.
And that's not the case in Western, like in Europe or probably in
Right.
America either.
It's interesting because it used to be like when we lived in our small tribes together, that it was very common, not just in Asia, but in other parts of the world as well, that women had a lay-in period after they gave birth, typically 41 days. They were cared for. The other women in the community would help care for the children. They would help cook and clean and do all the things. And so that she could do nothing but basically lay in bed and rest and recuperate and recover. And with the invention of automobiles and airplanes, and our travel has disrupted our small communities. We've left our communities where we were so tight-knit and everyone knew each other and it was very small, and we're flying all over the world. Parent families don't live together anymore. Children move and they move away from parents, sometimes very far away. Our communities have been disrupted a little bit with modern progress.
And that is also the reason depression is so common, postnatal depression, because when a woman is unsupported, when she feels the weight of everything she needs to do, and at the same time feels how depleted she is after giving birth, this is just like too much. And if she knows that there is no one, there is no mother or mother-in-law or a friend or anyone who comes in, she just feels like giving up. I have worked with women with postnatal depression, and it is heartbreaking to see what they have to deal with, and objectively with no help, on their own. I know women who were submitted to the hospital, to the inpatient units, who just became psychotic because it was just too much of a stress on not just the body, but also on the mind. When you just become a mom, you are almost like becoming aware of everything that you need to do, that you will need to provide for the child, the whole trajectory. You realize that it's a whole life. It's not just like, okay, this tomorrow and and in a month's time I'm free. No, that's it. From that moment, that's it. So that is a huge weight on a woman's shoulder, and then compounded that with some women having children late now. Well, many women having children late. So in the late 30s, some of early 40s, which is the time where already the hormones are declining. So from your perspective, can you speak a bit to that? What impact this can have on having a baby in perimenopause?
I've seen it go really badly for some women, and I've seen some women do it like rock stars.
I can imagine the rock stars, because if the hormones would be skyrocketing during pregnancy, and those women feel amazing, and then when the pregnancy finishes, they may feel crap.
Right. And that actually happened to me. My first two children I had very close together by accident. The second one was not intended, but I'm glad he's here. I love him. But it wasn't my intention to have them that close together because I knew the importance of spacing them out further. But I had them when I was 22 and 23. So I was very young. And then it would be another 7 years before I would have my next one. And then another 6 years after that before I had my last one. So I was 37 by the time I gave birth to my fourth one. And my first three, I actually recovered fairly well. I didn't feel a really big impact, but when my fourth one was born, I had a lot of symptoms of menopause right after he was born. I mean, for the first 2 weeks, when I was home from the hospital, I actually did home births with my first three and had a more difficult time with the fourth one. So I had to go to the hospital. And once I was home from the hospital, I called my midwife and I said, I don't know what's going on with my body. I am having hot flashes. I can't sleep at night. I'm having night sweats to the point that I'm like soaking the sheets. Like this isn't optional to just lay here and try to sleep through it. I now have to get up and either lay a towel down or change the bed sheets completely. It was that much. It was that extreme. And I'm irritated and I feel like I'm not myself and I don't know what to do about it because this is miserable. And they said, well, we don't really know why this happens, but sometimes women kind of go through like a mini menopause after they give birth. The hormones are very high and then they crash and we just push through it. It's going to be okay. it's going to be okay.
Puzzles me. It sounds crazy. It puzzles me. Why in medical establishment they say we don't know quite that why that happens. It's obvious why that happens. The hormones crashing. I mean, you exactly what happened to me, even though I wasn't pregnant. But after finishing the contraceptive pills I was on for like about 10 years, I was not cycling. My body was not producing any hormones. And I, like you, I didn't have an option not to change the sheets in the middle of the night because they were soaked through.
Yeah, it's so wild. But what they said was what made sense to me because I'd already known enough. I'd done enough certifications that I knew how to support menopause. And so when she said, "Yeah, we just go through this mini menopause," I went, "Oh, ding, ding, ding. Okay,
I
I
know
know
what to
how to
do.
help this." So
Mhm.
even it was really fascinating because they're like, "Yeah, we don't really know how to do this. Just eat really well, take your vitamins, and your body will correct itself." And that might have been the case after a few more weeks, but I'm like, I am going psychotic with not being able to sleep. I'm already getting up with the baby every 2 hours to feed the baby. And then when
Yeah,
I finally do fall asleep, now I wake up sweating and now I've got to get up again. And then I can't go back to
yeah.
sleep. And, oh, it was just this really feeling quite psychotic after just a few days. And I
Mm.
thought, I don't know how
Mm.
women push through this, but
Yeah.
I know what to do for hormones. So I took an adrenal support and a hypothalamus and pituitary support
Mhm.
and made sure to take, I had a really, really good multivitamin. And in 2 days, with starting the adrenal support, within 2 days, most of my symptoms were gone. Like that's
Wow.
how quickly, our bodies can recover if we
Mhm.
give them the tools that they need.
Yes, and I think it's really important to say that you knew it because you are a professional. This is what you do for a living. You know how to support the body from nutritional point of view to do its job. Because when the body has all the components, it will do its job. It will kind of come back to balance naturally. But a woman who has been through that and maybe watching this and doesn't know, what is the adrenal support that you mean? What are those things that could safely support a woman in such a situation, just temporarily for a bit of time? What would you suggest?
I took myself an adrenal glandular, which
Mm-hmm.
is so you have two types of supplements. You have herbals, which are herbs and vitamins to support the body, and you can do that. Ashwagandha, there's a lot of adaptogens that you can use to
Mm-hmm.
support the adrenals. But I feel like with pregnancy in particular, with giving birth, you need something stronger. And the stronger things are glandulars. They're made literally from the glandular components, usually bovine and so you have these components that the idea is that like heals like. So if your adrenals are having a hard time regulating themselves, you should eat adrenal glands of another animal, but that's disgusting. No one wants to do that. So they put it into capsules and you can swallow it.
I was on Armor. I was on Armor
Yeah,
Thyroid. It is basically made
yeah, the
from
same thing as
thyroid. Yeah,
desiccated
yeah,
thyroid. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Desiccated
absolutely.
thyroid. So women's bodies give a lot during pregnancy, but at the same time, we are resilient. We are made for that. So it's not that this is a condition or that this is something that we should worry about. We are made to
Correct.
adapt, and I think it's
Absolutely.
worth making that point. It's important to know what to do and how to address if women's bodies are struggling.
Yep, absolutely. Our bodies are made for change. And I wouldn't ever want any woman to feel anxious because she thinks that maybe something's wrong with her body or whatever is going on with your body. Your body is designed for change. Our bodies are designed to fluctuate so much. Progesterone alone can fluctuate by 80% in a
Mhm.
90-minute period. Our hormones we're constantly in flux. We're like the sun. We're giant explosions of hydrogen. And sometimes those explosions are a little bit less, and sometimes it's a little bit more. So, there's warming and cooling periods that we go through, and that's okay. Our bodies are designed to handle that kind of change and stress. The point is that we need to nourish our bodies physically and nourish our bodies emotionally and mentally, and when you have that emotional support, I think that's the single largest determining factor if a woman is going to have postpartum depression is how safe she feels in her relationship with her partner, in her community. Like you said, does she feel cared for? Does she feel supported? And that
Mm,
that does a lot to alleviate the mental stress,
mhm.
of what she might
Yeah,
be feeling that might contribute to physical problems.
absolutely. But there are times when women's bodies say no, and there are certain things that accumulate in our body.
Hmm.
Sometimes these are emotions, sometimes these are unexpressed words, or just
Hmm.
desires. And for me personally, when I discovered that I have a thyroid condition, I started doing everything from the functional medicine point of view, and and I changed my diet. I haven't had gluten for like 15 years now, I think. I was on Armour Thyroid for a while. I did lots of things that should have worked until I discovered that there is another layer to all of this, which is the emotional, which is the what have I not expressed in my life, what I'm not allowing myself to say in my relationships, in my work, where am I kind of like either dimming my light or maybe just like censoring things. And I had to kind of face, parts of me which were run by this program to be a good girl, to fit in, to behave in certain way. And then I started reading about this, and it turned out that it's very common. So not just started seeing it in my clients, but also because I come from Poland. In Poland, there is huge amount of thyroid conditions, but also women are like expected to behave in a certain way. So I'm wondering
absolutely.
If that layer of thyroid condition, or basically when the body kind of starts to protest against something, you come across among your clients.
Oh, absolutely. It's really interesting. In traditional Chinese medicine, they say if you get a sore throat, it's because you're swallowing your truth. And how closely, the thyroid sits in the throat. So
Yes.
it's very interesting. And I think that this problem it goes back so many generations. Like if you look, this isn't a new thing. This, expectation for women's behavior. It used to be, my goodness, guys could go out gallivanting around and do whatever they want, make complete whores of themselves, and they were just being manly, they were just being a guy. But if a woman did the same thing, oh my gosh,
Oh
she
my
was
gosh.
a slut, and her reputation was ruined forever, and no one would have anything to do with her. And that is just a thing. Even today, we see in high school, the later part of schooling, if you have teenage boys that are just, it's still just this, oh, well, boys will be boys kind of mentality versus girls. Like if a girl's reputation is damaged for whatever reason, it takes her a lot longer to recover that than it does for a boy. Boys is like, it's just over and over. Everyone forgets about it the next day. But if it's a girl, oh my goodness. So this is a centuries old, if not even further back, problem that we face. And that psychological component, you need to behave this way. You need to stop putting up a fuss. You need to do as you're told. That kind of mentality, it does take a toll psychologically. Those feelings sit inside your body. They don't go away. There's been several books written on this that are absolutely fascinating. One is called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And it's so eye-opening. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of different feelings and layers of emotions. And as humans, we're complicated, and we can feel multiple things at one time. And if we bury that, if we excuse it, if we push it under the rug, it does nothing but sit and fester.
Of course, there are theories that stress, unprocessed stress and trauma leads to illnesses. And even though it's not proven, or in kind of Western science, you cannot statistically say it, we see it in clinical practice. Like we see, at least I see clients who had traumatic things happening to them, who had a lot of stress, and they have certain illnesses. It's interesting because as a clinical psychologist, I am not supposed to say it. I'm not supposed to even think this way, but it's hard not to notice.
And just because something isn't acknowledged or documented by Western theory or Western medicine doesn't mean it doesn't exist or that it's invalid.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Luckily now I don't work within the NHS, so there are certain things you can do and cannot do when you work for the system. I now work independently, and I work in a very holistic way, not quite, very holistic way. So I bring elements into my practice as a psychologist that I wouldn't be allowed to bring in normal NHS work, because I bring nutrition, I bring spiritual components. I
and
recommend.
isn't it lovely?
Yeah, well, thank you. The clients that work with me are aware of it. I describe it on my website, and before they commit, I say to them that I'm not working in a typical way. Please read about how I work. I have some videos on my website if you are okay with that, because I talk about unexpressed emotions. I talk about soul and what is, like what is depression? According to me, depression is when the body says no, when the body
Mm.
says, I had enough of this life. You are not living your life. You are not fulfilled. You are not happy. You're in the wrong job or maybe in the wrong relationship. And the body just cuts off the energy supplies. Like it's like you're going to lay down and reflect and
Right.
think about your life and do something and change something. And
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
pretty hard to hear for some people,
Yeah.
but I do believe that there is a gift in those kind of illnesses when they happen. For a
Mhm.
year, I was working in oncology, and with those people that I was working with, it was years ago, probably 80%, if not more, of my clients at the time, maybe not in those exact words, but at the end of our work together, said that cancer was actually a gift or was actually something that allowed them to
Yeah.
see, that maybe they don't appreciate their spouse enough, or maybe they haven't had such a healthy life, or maybe that they are in the wrong job, or maybe that they
Mhm.
actually want to travel more and actually don't want to live in the city or whatever. Those illnesses or those kind of tragic things often bring gifts, and those gifts are wrapped in a sandpaper, so they are not pleasant gifts.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, if you look at it from the perspective of like a whole lifetime, then they are
Right.
gifts. They kind of change the trajectories.
In our Western way of thinking, we look at cancer and we're like, oh, this is a bad thing. We have to fight it. And we're going to chop off our breasts, or we're going to remove our uterus, or we're going to do whatever, when we get cancer, we're just going to chop that piece out. And it absolutely is this. It's like part of your body isn't the enemy. It's not about removing that diseased part. It's about recognizing that your body has said, wow, I'm really out of balance. And it's this
Mm,
beautiful opportunity for you to examine your life and go, where
mm,
have I been out of balance? Let me pull that,
mm,
whatever that is, whatever, if it's a toxic relationship, you're overworked, it's not saying no enough, saying yes to too many things and not creating enough time for yourself. Whatever it is, your body is screaming for balance because that's what we
yeah,
are designed to have. We're striving to keep this equilibrium and this balance in our life. And it's like that with I find that with so many things in our lives. I was listening to a podcast by Esther Perel,
mhm.
and she was saying that affairs and infidelities in relationships aren't necessarily a bad thing, because
Yeah,
kind of
that's in
like
the same one.
cancer, right? Kind of like cancer. She said it's an opportunity
Mm,
for you to address problems in your relationship. You
yeah.
might truly be with someone who is just a narcissistic asshole, and maybe
Mm,
it's a wake-up call that it's time to leave them. But
yeah.
maybe it's a good way to address something that your spouse has been missing. Maybe
Mm.
they're seeking for something that they're not getting from you, and it's a good opportunity to address that.
If it's the person that, I don't know, let's say if it's a woman, like what am I missing that I am looking outside? So
Right.
I think whether that's illness, affair, or basically difficult situations in life, they are messengers. They tell us something is not right.
Absolutely.
We are out of balance, like you
Yeah.
say. What other ways from your practice do you have noticed when the body says no? When women's bodies, specifically women's in perimenopause, what do you have any kind of examples of things that are pretty common in your practice as a nutritionist or even as a massage therapist?
Probably the biggest symptom that I hear women complain about, and that I see in myself when I don't take time to properly nourish myself, is this extreme fatigue, that women
Mm,
talk about. I just feel mentally drained. I just feel like physically, I just can't keep up with things. I used to be able to work 18-hour days, no problem. And now
mm,
I'm just dragging to get myself out of bed, and I mean, across the board, that's what women complain about. And then shortly after that comes like the low libido and the depression, and everything else starts to set in. And it really, again, what it comes back to is like when I look at their life, and I'm the same as you, we can't just coach one facet of your life. I mean, that's great. I can throw a multivitamin at you
yeah,
and you'll probably start to feel physically somewhat better. But how are your relationships? What is your
mm,
time in a day? What does your time
yeah,
ratios look like? How much time are
yeah,
you spending sleeping? How much time are you spending just with downtime? Just not doing anything. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you read a smutty romance novel. I don't care if you do a puzzle. I don't care if you take a walk by yourself. I don't care if you sit with the lights off in your bedroom and do nothing. But how much time are you taking to really have that downtime and to self-regulate
Yeah.
your nervous system,
Mm.
and addressing all of those components are the same. How is your sex life? Do you feel safe? What do you do for religion, your spiritual beliefs? Are you feeding
Mm.
that component of yourself? You may not be religious in the traditional sense. Are you doing community service? Are you connecting with people? What is it that you're doing that's feeding yourself?
Oh my
That's
God, Emily, I love this. I love this because I think that's why I enjoy talking with you so much because our work, even though we work in different fields, has so much overlap.
so
Like you
much
say,
overlap.
I cannot just, even if someone comes to me with the depression, and I'm a clinical psychologist, so a lot of the time I see people who are stressed, depressed, who are anxious, but actually, this is just a symptom of something bigger happening in their life.
Yes.
So it is a symptom of what you just said, them not having enough time for themselves, or them putting other people's needs first, or not having great diet, or rushing, 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 rushing. So all of it is connected. So even though you are a nutritionist, you also mentioned, psychological aspects and spiritual aspects and community aspects. I'm a
Hmm.
psychologist, but I mention, nutrition and everything. Often women may know that they should be taking time for themselves, or that they should maybe not have that kind of glass of wine in the evening. But when their spouse has it, it's harder kind of to say no, because then what? Am I going to sit and watch him drink? Or like if someone is asking me, let's say, I don't know, there's something that needs doing in the house, okay, and I am tired. Am I just going to say, I have to have time off. I'm not here. Please ignore me. Or I'm just going to get up and do that thing and put another washing on and maybe give breakfast to someone. So it's hard to say no in day-to-day life. So do you
Hmm.
find that this becomes a difficulty with the clients that you work with? And do you have any tips for women that you work with this respect?
All the time. Really what it comes down to is boundaries. Right?
Mm,
Healthy boundaries. We often think about having healthy boundaries as
mm,
saying no to someone else and practicing this outside of ourselves. But I tell women all the time, boundaries also include what you're comfortable with and what you need in your life. So my personal boundary that I try to work for is that I have an hour to myself every day, whatever that looks like, doing something that I want to do, So like
amazing.
this podcast today is my hour that I got to get up early before everyone else in my family and have this quiet, enjoyable time that feeds me mentally, that is something that I'm interested in. And if you can do that, an hour is such a small fraction of the day out of 24 hours, 1 hour for yourself to
Mm,
just unwind, to practice an instrument, to do your art, to do the painting, to go visit a friend if you want to see a friend, whatever
to
that
have a
is.
bath, to have
Yeah,
a
have a
bath,
bath,
or to
take
do
a bath and
nothing.
just relax for a minute.
Exactly. I cannot remember who was it, but it was like a famous woman. I cannot remember if she was someone like Dolly Parton or some kind of CEO of a big business. But I remember reading an article, an interview with her, and she said that every day at 4 p.m. she has her bath. And no one, absolutely no one in the family is allowed to interrupt that time, to get into the
Yeah,
bath. And only after that, she comes back from work, she does that. And only after that, she starts cooking and is available,
yes,
to the whole family, can do everything, but that hour is
yeah,
sacred. So I
yep.
I often recommend that, like women tell me I cannot afford an hour. Okay, do half an hour, do 20 minutes, but have it. And
Hmm.
because you saying yes to yourself is what makes other people say yes to you. If you keep
That is exactly
ignoring
correct.
yourself,
Yes,
like everyone else will be ignoring your needs. So if we
yes,
don't say no to things we don't want.
yes. And as equally important, you are setting a good example. If you have children, you are setting that good example for your children.
Mm, yeah.
Especially daughters will look at you and go, oh, this is how you do this. This is how you be healthy. This is how you create this good space for yourself. It's a good thing to do that. And it's a struggle. It is. It's just a struggle. It's so easy to push all of your needs to the back, put that on the back burner and turn the heat down low and just let that simmer in the background. And it's really easy to do that, but we absolutely can't afford to do that. It's too
Mm.
expensive. It becomes too expensive of a process for us in the
And
long run.
and especially in perimenopause. I think that in perimenopause, it becomes so expensive that our body just refuses to pay that price. And
Yep.
also our fluctuating hormones on in some respect are actually in our favor, because we have those surges of estrogen that may make us so aggressive and so like, no, that's it.
Right,
or,
right.
or we may have less progesterone. There is a lot, I think, that women wake up to in their 40s, and one of those things is just more ease in saying no, more
Yeah,
ease in just putting your needs first of all, because
yeah,
you're sometimes so exhausted that there's just like no option, and it's
right.
not, and you're saying no, or you being, annoyed, irritated, or aggressive, is actually, you are so exhausted to the point that you just have no more capacity to even say things nicely.
Right.
You're just at the end of your tether. I think perimenopause is that time where we can be more boundaried. Do you
hmm
agree?
Absolutely. And that's again, just like, not that I would, it sounds kind of bad to say that perimenopause is kind of like cancer, but back to that conversation that that cancer is this opportunity to re-examine and reevaluate. So is perimenopause. Perimenopause is a change that can sometimes be painful if
Mm,
things are out of balance. It's a really good opportunity to re-examine your life and go, I've had a lot of energetic output for everyone else in my life this
yeah.
entire time, whether it was, whatever it is in your life that you've been doing. It's time to pull back and re-examine where I can redistribute my time and use it more
Mhm.
wisely so that I am more nourished and more cared for.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
and it's important, right? I mean, you can, for women who are like, no, but I have so much to do. You will do it better if
Hmm.
you are rested. You will
Yeah.
have so much more to give your family, your community, your job when you are yourself rested.
Yeah. I remember years ago, I was running a series of courses for GPs, for general practitioners, for doctors
hmm
in
hmm
primary care in England. A lot of them, they are really stressed. I think GPs and teachers are the most stressed
Sure.
occupations. So what I was explaining to them is that they taking time for themselves is not selfish, is actually altruistic. If they are more rested, if they are happier, if they are well slept, if they feel more resourced, they have more patience, more attention, more
hmm
care to give. Otherwise, if they are just running, like headless chickens and just trying to do
Yes.
everything, and many of them have to do that because they have 8 minutes
hmm
and they have to type and listen, and at the same time already know that the beeping is coming on the screen, that someone else is come earlier, or there is a
hmm
waiting, someone is waiting, so they have to deal with a lot. But if they don't take, and not just them, like anyone, if we don't pour into our own cup, we have much less to give.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's interesting. My husband's son, one of his sons lives in Salt Lake and he works for a vitamin company. And when he was first hired onto this company, he it kind of analyzed productivity of all of the employees. And they had a gym built in, I think, somewhere on the bottom floor of this building. And he said, here's what I recommend. Pay your employees to go to the gym. Give them that hour so that they have this time off in their day where they can go and take that time at the gym. Because he watched the productivity of the employees who used the gym versus the ones that didn't. And he said, make this part of their day, allow them that hour to go, to do that thing for themselves. And just let's see what happens. And they did that across the board. All of the productivity went up. It was much better for the company to
Wow.
sacrifice that hour, just 1 hour for their employees, and it made everyone perform better.
Mm.
So that applies to men and women, especially to women.
Yeah. And I would say especially to women in perimenopause, because this is the time of women's life where it's the body's struggling a bit more, or at least things that are unbalanced are coming to surface. So she
hmm
has less resources, the hormones are declining, and it coincides with the time when there is more stress. They
hmm
are sometimes at the peak of their career. They are at the time when the children are teenagers. The parents are,
Right. The parents
aging, and
are
maybe
aging
they're
and need
already
help. Yep.
there is more demand on those resources, there is less resources, so it's even more important for women this age, my age, your age, to pour into our own cups.
Yes, absolutely.
One condition that also is much more prevalent among women, which is Alzheimer's. I think some cases even 85% of all diagnosed people with Alzheimer's are women. So this is because of the decline in estrogen. But can we say a bit more? Can you talk a bit more about that?
I'm so glad that you brought this up. So it's really important to understand from a physiological perspective how the brain handles glucose. Right? Most of the population doesn't eat keto. We're not in ketosis, but glucose is like putting car gasoline in your body. Ketones are like jet fuel. So ketones are so much better to be burning. I'm so glad that you brought this topic up because it's so important to understand how our brains work, especially for women as we go into perimenopause. Our brains, glucose getting to our brains is estrogen dependent. So as we have the decline in estrogen, we don't have that vehicle to get the glucose to our brains. And we understand, our brain uses 25% of the glucose in our body, just in our brain. So it's hugely important for our brain to keep nourished in that way. Yeah. Ketones are different. So as I always tell women, this is the time in your life where you don't need as many carbs. We're not building bodies anymore at this point. Hopefully we're in a phase where it's just not a big building time. So getting more into ketosis, ketones getting to the brain for energy, and ketones are like jet fuel versus car fuel. They're so much more efficient for the body. That's actually our body's preferred resource for energy. Ketones getting to the brain are not estrogen dependent. So it's a really big deal. We see glucose imbalance problems really affect women's brains more so than men, do. It's a huge problem. And glucose imbalance in general. Here's like another reason to go more keto, because more and more people are becoming diabetic with diabetes type 2, which is completely diet and lifestyle controllable. But more and more people, as they get older, they tend to get diabetes. And when the blood sugar is out of control in the body, when there's too much glucose that gets to the brain, our brain has not really any ability to detoxify that glucose. Our brain is just a different part of the body. It's built differently. So like the rest of our body has lots of lymphatic cells. We have muscles to move that lymph around. It's easier to do. Our liver is right there. It's very helpful, to detoxify things. Yeah. But with the brain does have small lymph nodes in it, but not as much as the rest of the body. So when toxins, whether it's too much glucose, whether it's, aspartame, sucralose, chemicals of any kind, once those get into the brain, the body has a very difficult time excreting those from the brain to get that mess out. So it's very important with both of those pathways that you don't have blood sugar imbalance, so that you don't have too much sugar in your brain, and also that you have those ketones available so that energy can get to your brain in a more efficient way once that estrogen declines.
And that is the reason that women are much more susceptible to Alzheimer's, because of declining levels of estrogen, so which were high and now are low. For men, it's different. Their estrogen was low to start with, and it's the same. It's the same throughout their life. For us, it's declining, and therefore the brain becomes insulin resistant. So it's like the brain doesn't know what to do with that sugar that's coming in, cannot use it. So the brain is undernourished, let's say. But some people even call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Some other people say it's not type 3 diabetes. More accurate would be to describe it as insulin resistance of the brain. We know that it's because of the estrogen. So the solution, to this would be to have more ketogenic diet. I would say also kind of support the body with hormone replacement therapy, because I think the best protective results are when HRT is introduced 6 years before menopause, in terms of like how the body is protected for the later years.
Yeah.
So even if a woman doesn't have symptoms, it will be worth still thinking about how will my brain, how will my muscles, how will my heart, how will my bones be in 30 years from now if you are in your 40s? You know,
Yep.
how will I be moving, or how will I be thinking, how independent I will be when I'm 80 or 70?
Yeah.
And the time to do something is now, is when you are in your 40s.
Absolutely. The sooner you can set your body in more healthy pathways, the better the effects will be on the far side of that pathway, at the end of that road.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you want women to remember or take away specifically from today?
Just that you taking care of yourself and you taking the time to bring your body into balance will set the example and set the tone for everyone else around you. You will impact it like the ripple effect, right? You will impact everyone so positively by taking care of yourself.
I sometimes give a metaphor of a wristwatch with those little cogs inside. Like, you cannot change how one cog is moving without it having impact on the whole watch. So if
That
you
is
slow
exactly
down
correct.
your pace, if you adjust your pace, the whole system around you will adjust. It just
Yep.
has no option, because women are driving forces in families, as we discussed in our previous
Yep.
episode.
Absolutely.
Emily, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to the next one. And if you guys have some questions or comments, please send us a message. Please post underneath. And if there are any specific topics you would like us to talk about, let us know, and we would be very happy to discuss that.